tales of Xmas on Channel X. I am your host, the Christmas Creeper of Channel Xmas. Before we begin, remember to hit subscribe and jingle the bell. This ensures that you'll be notified of new episodes from Channel X. And if you enjoy the video, please hit the thumbs up. We now present The Santa at My Local Mall is Acting Strange. I know it sounds crazy, and that I must be delusional, right? Just hear me out, please. I'm a poor college student, so obviously I took a job at the local mall. I didn't apply to be a store worker or anything like that. No. I chose to apply for the open janitor position. At first, I thought it was going to be terrible, but I soon found out that it wasn't that bad. Sure, I'd have to clean up the occasional filthy bathroom and someone's McDonald's blowout at one of the many tables of the food court. But for a cool $16 an hour, it wasn't half bad. I had been working at this specific mall for around 3 years throughout my college experience, so I practically knew everyone that worked there. It was October 31st, at the end of the night. We were all clocking out after cleaning up some of the Halloween stuff that had decorated the mall. Of course, there was no way we could have gotten it all down in one night, but we did get a lot down. We all went home that day knowing that the next day would involve a lot of tearing down fake spiders and spirits. So I'm guessing you can sense my shock when I walked into the mall the next day. The mall, which had always been stingy on Christmas decorations, was a full-blown Christmas wonderland. String lights decorated each wall. 12 giant-sized nutcrackers guarded each exit. A huge, fully decorated Christmas tree was set up in the very middle of the mall, sending a chilling aura around the place. I took a quick loop around the mall, admiring all the beautiful decor. It was like I was walking in Fantasyland. Then, I noticed what was clearly labeled as Santa's workshop. It was like something out of a Hallmark Christmas movie. A giant red throne sat in the middle. Another giant Christmas tree sat right behind the throne, fully decorated like before. Tiny Christmas trees formed a kind of line, which would soon be brimming with children. Red velvet rope encircled the whole place, while shrubbery scattered around the sides made it impossible to see Santa's throne from anywhere other than directly in front. I always thought companies setting up for holidays way too early was a funny joke, and slightly true, but this was ridiculous. I felt a tapping on my shoulder and quickly spun around. It was Tom, one of the other janitors. We shared a couple of comments about how insane this was, but I quickly wished him goodbye. The one good thing about our mall's Christmas season was our mall Santa, Bobby. Bobby was probably the nicest person I have ever met. He has 3 amazing children who are just as nice and kind as Bobby. I ran over to my supervisor's office to ask him a couple of questions. I quickly tapped on my supervisor's door and let myself in. He looked over a stack of the papers in his hand to look at me. "Can I help you?" "Yes, sir. About the Christmas stuff. Isn't it amazing? We had to hire a new mall Santa because Bobby moved to Colorado for a more permanent job. But the new mall Santa insisted on coming in last night and setting up. I guess I can't complain. It's a lot better than it would have ever been." I nodded my head before turning toward the door. It isn't a problem, is it? No, sir. It's just that I'm going to miss Bobby. Yeah, I am too. He was awesome, wasn't he? Yeah, he was. I stepped back out into the winter wonderland. I had 1,000,001 thoughts swirling around my head. Who was the new mall Santa? How could he set this up all in one night by himself? I continued with my day like any other. It was a Friday, so I didn't have any classes. I had a full day's work ahead of me. I think it was around noon when I made it back to Santa's workshop. My day was so busy that I had forgotten to go introduce myself to the new mall Santa. I quickly snuck a peek at him, and he looked completely normal. I couldn't quite get a good look at him as children filled a line. I walked a little closer to him, seeing if I could get a better look. The closer I got, the more disturbing and not right he seemed. Something was definitely off. That was, till he opened his mouth to talk. Okay, hear me out. He sounded almost robotic when he talked. Imagine a robot saying this.
And what would you like for Christmas, little girl?
And you would get exactly what I heard. It was so unnerving that even the children started to notice, and the smaller of them would often break into tears. Right when I was about to get closer, I heard a loud noise come from behind me. I looked back, noticing a tray of food scattered all over the floor, while a person with a dumbfounded look just stared at it. I quickly grabbed my cleaning equipment. The day ended with nothing happening. I went and tried to introduce myself to the new mall Santa, but he was nowhere to be found. I went to bed that night tossing and turning. Strange dreams flooded my mind, but I remember one vividly. I woke up to blinding lights blending into one another before my vision became clear. I was strapped down to a hospital bed, but I couldn't move. And oddly enough, I couldn't breathe. Well, rather, I didn't need to breathe. I lifted my head as far as I could and noticed there was nothing else in this concrete room other than me and this bed. At the end of the room, there was an open door, and on the other side, there seemed to be a giant room as long as it was wide. All types of Christmas decorations have filled that room, giving off a very chilling vibe. At the end of the room, there were 2 white dots that seemed to penetrate through me. Then it blinked. It opened its large mouth, baring its sharp teeth, and it spoke.
Oh, oh, oh.
I started squirming in terror. I couldn't scream, so my voiceless breath filled the room.
6.
My legs started to cramp, and my arms became sore.
6.
My eyes shot open as the droning noise of my alarm was blaring. I didn't have time to think about my dream, as I was already late for work. I quickly got dressed and rushed over to the mall. The whole day, I stayed as far away from Santa's workshop as I could. That was, until I was called over to the food court by one of my supervisors. The food court happens to be directly across from the Santa's workshop. Just my luck. Last night was still ingrained into my head. After spending around 10 minutes cleaning up whatever was on the floor, I realized I was being foolish. There was no such thing as a robotic sharp-toothed Santa. So, I decided to take a peek. I wish I didn't. As soon as I looked at him, it swiveled its head to look directly at me. Then it winked its eyes, shining red, for just a second. Raising both his arms in perfect sync, it held up 7 fingers. It then opened its mouth just a little bit wider than it had before. And below the perfect row of pearly white teeth laid rows of sharp, mangled bone. As you can imagine, I got out of there as quickly as I possibly could. I told my supervisor I wasn't feeling good and took the rest of the day off. At home, I did some research and ended up with absolutely nothing. I gave up my research fairly quickly because nothing was coming up for evil Santa except Krampus, but I was fairly certain that wasn't it. I spent the rest of the afternoon in tranquil peace and quickly dozed off after a few episodes of The Office. A sharp knock at my door made me swiftly wake up from my light sleep. I gasped as a scream could not escape me. My apartment was covered wall to wall in Christmas lights, and a number was written in blood on my wall.
8.
I couldn't turn to anyone. They would think I was crazy. So I kept it to myself and tore down all the lights and thoroughly washed my walls. What did the numbers mean? Did it correlate with the date? Was it a countdown to a certain number? And if so, what number? And what would happen if they got to it? A flurry of thoughts jumbled around my brain. And all I knew was that I had to do something, and fast. I went to work the next day with a plan. I would spend the whole day as far away from there as possible. And when the mall was near closing, I would sneak over and follow him to see whatever he was hiding. And that's exactly what I did. It was around 10 minutes till closing, so I quickly made my way over to the food court. I tried to stay in the shadows while keeping a close eye on it. It didn't seem to notice me while I watched from afar. A crackle came over the mall's intercom.
The mall is closing in 5 minutes.
The line to Santa, which was always full, was now starting to disperse, and it was starting to get up to leave. I followed closely behind while also keeping my distance. He walked into the staff area of the mall and turned left. Then something strange happened. I followed him past another sharp corner, and there was a door I had never seen before. It felt off, and I knew something was strange, but I kept following, more persistent than ever. I pushed open the door just a crack to the sound of a screaming child. Not wanting to give my position away, but wanting to see what was happening, I poked just my head in. Hanging from the ceiling was a child. She was hung up by her hands and feet with Christmas lights. She was struggling from something I couldn't see in a dark corner of the room. I did want to do something. I promise I'm not a monster. But what happened next will traumatize me for the rest of my life. A lanky creature stepped out of the darkness, the Santa suit still draped over it. Its jaw was opened way wider than it should have been. Tufts of skin were peeling off the arms. I noticed the hat had somehow fused to the top of its head. It slowly limped its way over to the child. She was screeching at the top of her lungs. Blood mixed with mucus flew out of her mouth. Then, the unthinkable happened. Slowly turned its head toward me. Its smile grew bigger and bigger. I could hear the popping of teeth coming out of place, and flesh ripping as its mouth grew in size. It sharply turned its head back to the girl and bit right into her neck. I stood there, helpless and limp. It yanked back at her neck, ripping bile and flesh from where the neck used to be. The thing slowly turned to me once again, blood staining every part of his body, and slowly held up the number 9 with its fingers. Now, I ask you, what would you do if you were face to face with a monster who had just taken the lives of 9 helpless children, just so it could mess with you?
Well, friends, if it were me, I'd probably try to contact Krampus to see if he could punish this bad Santa and help me out. Until next time, stay away from the mall Santa.